Hello, everyone, and welcome back from the BioNetwork breakout sessions. I had a chance to pop in on several of those, and I was really pleased about the conversations and particularly pleased to hear some common themes emerging from many of the groups, particularly around diversity and equity inclusion, which is, of course, one of the priorities for us in HCA. I'm really thrilled that we have for this next session a wonderful group of HCA funders, members of the HCA Funders Collective, who are here to tell you more about the Funders Collective itself and possibly some updates on their programs as well. We'll have a brief presentation from Katrina Gold from Welcome and from Jonah from CZI, and then we'll open it up for the entire panel, and then of course have some time at the end for audience Q&A. So I think without further ado, let me turn it over to Kat and Jonah.
Brilliant, thank you, John. I'm just going to share my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to know that you're all out there and to attend this kind of really large scale and inclusive HCA meeting. My name is Katrina Gold. I work at the Welcome. I'm currently based in my living room in London. And together with my good colleague Jonah at the Charitable Initiative, we're going to present a brief overview, introducing you to the Funders Collective and to try and present ourselves, talk a little bit about how we operate, some of the projects we support, and some of the kind of key areas and activities that we care about. And after that, we will introduce some additional funder colleagues who will kind of give a few updates or reflections, and then we'll have time for fielding questions. And if you don't want to ask us a question directly, we would really welcome any kind of additional follow-up comments. Please feel free to contact us at the meeting, follow up by email, always happy to talk. So without further ado, what is the Funders Collective? So this is a collaborative network comprising multiple funding organizations around the world who are interested in supporting HCA. And in 2019, we drafted a collective charter. So the Funders Collective makes it sound like quite a utopian socialist project, but effectively we operate a little bit like the biological networks that we're now seeing coming to kind of fruition and growing within HCA. And so some of the key priorities and goals for the group, firstly, is to provide a forum for actively engaged and interested funders to discuss opportunities and synergies among our individual efforts. To really encourage information flow and communication and dialogue among and across participating organizations, and to identify opportunities for collaboration that can allow us to support the needs of HCA and the HCA community as best as possible. So quite a large number of funders are involved in a range and variety of capacities. Right now we have around 25 organizations. And one of the key goals, and I think this is really important because in some ways the structure of the Funders Collective really mirrors a lot of the organization of HCA. So one of our goals is to really be flexible and inclusive. So any funding organization is welcome to participate, to join the collective, to join in regular calls, to sign up to the email list or participate in other activities and discussions, provided that they can commit to supporting the HCA in whatever kind of way that they want to, and also not applying for funding from other participants so that we avoid conflicts of interest. And we have quite a wide range of different kinds of funders or different categories. So there are governmental funders, including the European Commission or a super national funder, Genome Canada, UKRI, MRC, and several affiliated NIH programs. And there are also quite a few national and international philanthropic foundations and charities. So for example, the British Heart Foundation, the Charitable Initiative, the Helmsley Charitable Trust, the Cavity Foundation, the Carmen Family Foundation, and Welcome. And this is just a selection of funders. So there are more who are kind of involved and on the mailing lists. So we exist as a collaborative network. Really, we kind of have regular calls, we talk to each other fairly frequently, and we also see our role as we want to be a kind of channel to talk a lot with the community, with different HCA working groups, with HCA organizers and leaders, and to kind of really maintain that constant flow of dialogue. So in terms of how we actually operate, I currently am the chair of the Fundus Collective. We also have representation on the Joint Coordinating Committee, which is a group that has representation from both funders and from the Organising Committee of HCA. So Jonah is the co-chair of that, along with Aviv and Sarah. And there's also representation from Anna-Pia Papageorgiou from the European Commission, and also Michael Dunn or me, welcome. And then we additionally have representation on the board of HCA Inc. And that's where Kim McCabe at the Carmen Family Foundation is the funder representative or observer on that group. And all of those roles are rotating, and we kind of review, discuss, or vote on them annually. So what do we actually do in our capacity as funders? So we've highlighted here a selection of activities, but I would really emphasize that this is just a selection. And I think we would really acknowledge that there is a lot of work contributing to HCA, really important work that is not maybe directly badged as Human Cell Atlas funded work. And, you know, we are very open to kind of all of that being part of both, you know, the HCA collective and those funders kind of joining us for discussions. So just as an example, at Welcome, we provided strategic support for a UK kind of large-scale pilot consortium, and recently extending that work to provide funding for a whole embryo developmental atlas. And we also provide support for the Wellcome Sanger Institute. The MRC has funded a variety of developmental cell atlasing projects through the UKRI Strategic Priorities Fund. So these were seeking to compare developmental healthy tissues in adults and developing stages. The Helmsley Gut Cell Atlas program is really a major effort contributing to understanding healthy gut, ultimately with the goal of understanding both the kind of healthy reference and then how that's perturbed in disease and Crohn's. The European Commission has funded large-scale pilots. These are kind of European consortia to build foundations for the Human Cell Atlas across a number of organs, as many of you I'm sure are aware. Similarly, the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative is funding seed network projects. I think there are 38 of those across a whole range of tissues and with different emphases scales. The Brain Initiative is also funding a lot of relevant work trying to ultimately get to a reference of the brain in humans, non-human primates and mouse. And then finally, there's work that is, it's not work that's kind of supporting kind of direct research activities, but actually really crucial other activities that go around that. So there's jointly funded work for the HCA Ethics Working Group to provide a framework and a toolkit for a lot of the research that's going on, as well as providing support for the HCA executive offices and community meetings. So I think you can see from that list, there's a whole range of kind of different mechanisms that funders are using to support HCA. Some is research, some is community building, some is kind of coordination and meetings, and they're really at different scales, I think, and also timelines, you know, so some are more regional, some are very international, some might be multiple cross-organ, others are very tightly focused on one particular kind of question, but there are cross-cutting themes, and I think we've seen those coming out across the meeting as well. So for example, a lot of these are using a consortium structure. We're really, you know, encouraging that collaboration and the interdisciplinarity. Quite a few are focusing on large-scale pilot data generation, recognizing that you need to do this at scale in order to understand how you need to build the atlas. And I think one thing that we're all very excited to see is this springing up and emergence of the cross-consortia efforts, the biological networks. So bringing together separately funded efforts and actually seeing synergies across them. So I think we're as excited by those opportunities as you are as a community. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Jonah now for his bit.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. And just to echo Katrina's comments, it's really nice to see everyone or know that everyone is out there, and the presentations and the panels have been inspiring and exciting as always. So Katrina gave a great overview of who we are and how we're operating and some of the work that we've supported in the past. And I'll maybe pivot just a little bit to talk about some open funding calls. And this is an acknowledgement, I think, of at least two really important things. One is the progress that this community has made is really inspiring. And, you know, among the funders group, there's a lot of acknowledgement and appreciation for the impact and contributions to many fields, as well as all of the opportunities that this initial progress has opened up. And so there are some current funding opportunities, as well as some new priorities that these meetings always raise. The other thing that's really important to highlight is these general meetings are a wonderful opportunity for the community to get together, but an equally inspiring opportunity for new members of the community to come to the Human Cell Atlas and to start to learn more and to engage, and maybe to think about how to get involved with current bio networks or some of the new and emerging areas. And so it's simply an encouragement to everyone that is maybe less familiar with some of us as funders, less familiar with some of the work within the HCA, to stay tuned. And hopefully some of these calls that I'll cover in just a minute are interesting and relevant, but also the additional areas and feedback from all of you for what would be helpful and important. So the current calls that are, so the current calls that are active, one is an extension of the very successful work from the Brain Initiative, looking for really kind of broadening the scope of some of the foundational work that large network and the Brain Initiative Cell Census Network in particular has done within the mouse brain. And so there is a big U01 call that is open. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative had a call that is just closed, but is in review, and certainly is something that we'll be excited to share, and suspect that there will be more opportunities focused on ancestry. And John mentioned the interest in discussion, and it's been highlighted by many of the panelists on greater diversity. And I'll touch on this a little bit more in just a moment. And then also highlighting an announcement or pre-announcement from the MRC and again from the UKRI on multimodal research. And this maybe touches on both the importance of building the Atlas, but I think also something we'll hear more about tomorrow on the opportunities and links to disease research. And then finally, the Welcome Leap project, looking at integration platforms for predicting tissue states. Okay, so a few priorities, and I think this is actually really a perfect segue from what John mentioned as a frequent discussion in the bio networks. So many funders are really committed to and looking to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion within the calls. And so these are just a few examples of how we're looking to achieve this and looking to support your work and greater access, representation, equity among researchers. And I think we can share the slides, but wanted to kind of share different attempts here and also maybe point people towards the different specific efforts around guidance, application formats. I think across the board, the desire is really to support these efforts in the community. And I think this is a really, really important area scientifically and culturally, but also an area where hearing from you and hearing how to support this work is really important. Next slide. Great, and in addition, and maybe related to this, is some other areas where groups have been engaged, but I think it's becoming increasingly important around community engagement. And this can be construed pretty broadly, and I think touches on a lot of our work, but it includes collaborations with experts and community engaged researchers, or those that are or have a background and expertise in methods around participatory research, really meaning to engage with communities and perhaps underserved or underrepresented communities where engagement with populations has maybe not been good in the past and really needs to be addressed and trust needs to be built. So as to support engagement and maybe donor access or making sure that the benefits from the Human Cell Atlas flow back and can help impact and address disparities and other important aspects of this work. It also involves kind of broad education and really trying to highlight the learnings and progress within the Human Cell Atlas. And there's been some really wonderful examples of this. And I know the Wellcome Trust and others have supported great opportunities for the public to engage with and learn from the insights and get excited about the insights that everyone is making on the cells in our body. So these are two kind of areas related to community engagement that I think we'll see more of. And then finally, wanted to highlight the efforts that many funders have made to draw connections and promote collaborations and really support the grassroots and kind of groundbreaking model that the Human Atlas has built and has been extending. And these include, of course, supports for meetings such as this one, but also smaller, more focused meetings, such as meetings in the past to help identify and evolve the strategy around equity, regional meetings, including incredibly successful past meetings of the community in Asia, Latin America, and UK and the United Kingdom, as well as some of the computational workshops and training that I think was spoken about or alluded to earlier in a panel. And then very specific meetings within certain communities that have looked at, for example, cell type ontologies within the brain, right? So as you get to these very, very rich and deep molecular understandings of cells, how those are represented. And David Osumi-Sandler gave a great talk and mentioned this work yesterday, as well as some of the work from HubMap and many others that are looking to register this information in the anatomy of the body, so the Common Coordinate Framework workshops. There's also been efforts around community jamborees, so to bring together groups to collaboratively work on single questions. A recent one was a great grassroots effort in terms of open problems and single cell analysis that's, I think, will continue and extend. And then finally, support for specific projects in the bionetworks. So cross-cutting projects like the data coordination platform, and not just the technology and the development of the data coordination platform, but making sure that there is good privacy and regulations and compliance with emerging and evolving legislature like GDPR and others. And so this, again, is an area where many funders have contributed and participated. The road mapping efforts that were kind of initiated and kickstarted within the Gut Cell Atlas, and I think are now infusing many other bionetworks. And then finally, support for the ethics working group is something that has been supported by multiple funders, really as an intention to support the entire community. So those are some examples, but I think maybe the most important point, and maybe a good segue to the panel discussion, is that we really want to hear from all of you. These are emerging areas that have come up in the past, but the desire is to support similar things in the future and to be strategic and to be partners and to learn from all of you and hopefully support these in a dynamic and supportive way. Okay, with that, hopefully we can field some questions and have a discussion and do some introductions to others.
I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you, Jonah. Okay, well, I think you should be seeing, oh yes, I can see through Patrick's eyes a panel of us on screen now. So we were going to briefly introduce, or have some of our colleagues introduce themselves so you can hear from more of us. So I think we'll kick off with Holger.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina and Jonah. It was really an excellent overview. So I'm Holger Apitz. I'm program manager for cell and developmental biology at the UKRI MRC, and overseeing there the UKRI MRC Human Cell Atlas Initiative. Yeah, just a brief overview again about this initiative. So that has been started in 2018 by an investment of £7 million, really to support single cell gene expression and image analysis, as Katrina mentioned, in this matched developmental and adult human tissues. And the focus at that time had been on healthy and primary human tissue as a foundation, really, then for the future investigation into mechanisms of health and disease, what we would like to see in the future, hopefully. And the projects started in 2018, mainly funded for 2 years. So some of them have come to an end already, or some of them are coming to an end in this year because of some extensions. And also important to notice, it's a MRC-led initiative, but there's also co-funding by the British Heart Foundation for an award in this particular initiative. And yeah, so overall, it's 13 projects that have been funded, covering really a broad range of tissue types. Don't go into detail for that. Just to mention, there were also 3 supporting awards, which are very important for the MRC. First, supporting the HDBR, so the Human Developmental Biology resource, which is normally already supported by Wellcome and MRC in a joint funding approach. But they also got an extra award to further support this initiative by providing these crucial early stage human tissue samples, and thereby building really on this initial foundation already by the available funding. And we had also funding provided to the EMBL EBI and 2 awards, for one to facilitate data management and sharing, and one to provide training programs, which both awards are also very important for the MRC that they have been funded. And just as you also seen, there was a pre-announcement which now just started. This underscores really that MRC sees this initiative as a foundation for future researcher-led response mode investigations into mechanisms of health and disease, particular, and that aligns really with MRC ambitions in multimodal research. And we really hope that to see, and we do already, more application coming into regular funding streams, but also we have this PumpRine funding initiative open, the multimodal research across scales to understand human disease. And also, I would like to point out that MRC and UKRI is really seeking in the future to explore opportunities for a larger investment in this particular space.
Brilliant. Thanks, Holger. Andrea.
Thanks, Katrina. Again, like my colleagues, I'm really happy to be here. I'm representing the NIH Brain Initiative. BRAIN is actually an acronym for Brain Research Through Advancing Innovative Neurotechnologies. And there's 8 areas of research that we're supporting, and one of them is the cell typing effort. So we're really focused on circuits and understanding how brain circuits work, and recognizing that cell types are an essential unit in terms of circuit function in the brain. So that's where our cell typing effort originated, and we've been going since 2014. We have 3 phases of the cell type project overall. The first one was pilot work, where we asked for applications and gave out grant support looking at cell types in all different vertebrate species. Our second phase was to really focus on experimental systems and the mouse in particular. And so we have very large investment in understanding cell types in the mouse. And we started to support work in larger brains, primarily non-human primate and humans, in the second phase as well. And starting this year, we are launching the third phase, which is really a primary focus on human cell types in the brain. And so we have a pre-announcement out right now that is just alerting the field that we will have funding opportunities on the street probably in November. That date is a little flexible. We're hopeful that November will be the due date for those applications. So for those of you interested in examining cell types in the brain and learning more about cell types, specifically in the human brain or non-human primates, be on the lookout for that from the NIH Brain Initiative. We're really thrilled to be working with the Funders Collective. It's very interesting to see all the different sort of approaches to funding this work, and how when we meet, we really learn a lot from each other, and it helps us develop programs that are unique and complementary and non-duplicative. And so I do enjoy working with my colleagues, and we've actually been, I think, fairly productive as a diffuse unit in a funny way. So again, happy to answer any questions. As Katrina said, I'll stay on the line, and I believe our contact information is available. So if anybody has more specific questions about the NIH Brain Initiative.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrea. Jessica.
Thanks. So I'm Jessica Langer. I'm here from the Helmsley Charitable Trust. I am a program officer in their Crohn's disease program. If people don't know who we are, the Helmsley Charitable Trust is a private foundation with a healthcare focus. We focus on 4 different geographies and 2 different diseases, type 1 diabetes and Crohn's disease. So as you probably could tell, our focus is much narrower than some of the other funders who've been talking up until this point. Within the Crohn's disease program, our ultimate goal is to find a cure for Crohn's disease, but we realize it's the long-term goal. So in the meantime, we fund projects that help us prevent, diagnose, treat, and manage Crohn's disease. And we put the patient at the heart of everything we do. Our approach is really personalized medicine. We really want to get the right treatment to the right patient at the right time. And to do that, we really wanted to increase our understanding of the basic mechanisms that underlie Crohn's disease, which are still, even after decades of research, very unclear. So that is partially why we chose to fund what we call the Gut Cell Atlas. Full disclosure, it's not the full gut. We're really focused, we had to sort of limit to start somewhere. So we are focused on the terminal ileum and the ascending colon, which are the parts of the gut that are most often implicated in Crohn's disease. And we have about 15 different grants out currently, ranging from either full scale, large scale attempts at atlasing all the different cell types within the guts, as well as more focused efforts, which are focused on a particular cell type. We have a few technology pilot grants that are actually wrapping up about now, and the support grants such as the road mapping effort and the ethics working group that Jonah and Kat mentioned. What we're really hoping for going forward is to become more integrated into the Human Cell Atlas as a whole. We welcome other funders, other researchers to come and get in contact with us and with our researchers to try to widen our network. We really don't want to be exclusive. We really want to be as inclusive as we could be. I think the lung atlas has really been a wonderful example for everyone. And if you want to learn more specifically about our consortium, I will direct everybody to Keith Wilson's presentation.
Great, thank you. And Kim.
Yes, hi everyone. It's great to be here and to be able to listen in on a lot of the sessions to date. I'm Kim McCabe, the Executive Director of the Carmen Family Foundation, a private foundation based in Boston, also with a significant presence, including in research efforts in Israel. But I think I represent a little bit of a different take than many of my colleagues around the screen. And our interest in the Human Cell Atlas and our involvement really grew out of the foundation's investment in the Cell Observatory at the Broad Institute. And as we began following the launch and the HCA loved the really grassroots effort of the global scientific community coming together to design this. And the collaborative nature certainly resonated with us, as did the opportunity to think about supporting what we do throughout all of our funding, which is more of the what's that core, unrestricted, kind of the glue that holds the rest of it together. We ask ourselves, as a relatively small private funder, what can we add value to in the area of research in particular? And it's often that it could be pilot, it could be flexible, incubative grants. And currently we're funding along with others on this panel, the ethics work, as well as some meeting support and sort of the general office support through HCA Inc. that is now, as it's been incorporated, as you've heard, we're really excited to be able to provide some of that, maybe less sexy, but sort of the backbone resources that ripple throughout the various corners of the globe where HCA now is, but also the various different biological networks and other aspects. So we're eager, even as non-scientists, to be part of the funders collective, because we're learning a tremendous amount. And again, it's helpful for us to figure out how we can leverage what's the right role for this, for us as a funder. And as Katrina noted earlier, I have the pleasure of, at least for this year, representing the Funders Collective as an observer on the HCA Inc. So we're sort of leveraging our knowledge more about institutions and networks and less about the specific science to bring to this, but really thrilled to be a part of this and hope there are probably other funders who might not yet be as involved, and I encourage them to contact us to think about ways to join this group.
Brilliant. I think we've received a few questions. So I'm just wondering we've got a limited amount of time. John, do you think we can have an extra minute or so?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. So first one, which I think is very, very pertinent to a lot of the discussions going on at this meeting and in the wider community, is considering the diversity efforts and the global nature of HCA, are funders considering infrastructure funding for developing countries? So for example, setting up sequencing hubs which would feed into HCA. So that's a big question. I would say from a Wellcome perspective, it's a tricky one to answer right now. People may or may not be aware, but we recently launched a new strategy and we're still very much in the phase of implementing and figuring out what the kind of priorities will be for us. So at a high level, there's kind of 3 big health challenges, and then a broad focus on discovery research. So one kind of transformative, large-scale, ambitious kind of fundamental science, but actually what shape that takes is yet to be determined. But I think it's very clear that tools and technologies and resources that can democratize science and make things as accessible as possible and speed up the multi-caterpillar progress that I think kind of Muzz alluded to earlier on will be important. Jonah, did you?
Yeah, a quick comment here, because I think this is actually, it's a great question. And, certainly on, for my part at the Charitable Brain Initiative, we do not, currently support a lot of infrastructure around the world. So considering is absolutely something that we've looked at, but it's a great opportunity for a group of funders to connect and understand where other funders have, sizable investments in past infrastructure that's maybe being underutilized. So as to be able to support these needs, but also be very thoughtful about exactly what sort of infrastructure may be needed around specific tissue handling or processing, whereas maybe there's some existing infrastructure for core sequencing, for example. So I think, from my perspective, the answer is yes, but it also speaks to the importance of kind of learning what those needs are and for a group of funders to think about how to address those.
And I think, sorry, just to add from a Wellcome perspective, so I think H3 Africa came up in an earlier session, but certainly, some really fantastic kind of work and kind of training networks and things have been established there. And I think we'd be keen to build on, as Jonah said, any existing opportunities, learn from those, and then see what else is needed. Does anyone else want to chip in at that point? We can move on to another question, which is a simpler one. How many funders organizations are supporting HCA and how can new funders join? So right now we think there's around 25, because it's a little bit like a bio, because we're fairly loose and open and inclusive, I think we have kind of a fairly a spectrum of kind of funders who are involved and engaged, I would say. There's opportunities for kind of engagement at different levels, but around 25. How can new funders join? It's very easy. Please get in touch with any of us and we can kind of put you in the loop, or get in touch with the HCA Executive Office if you're not sure about how to find us, and they can also connect you to us. So we are willing to talk to people and bring new funders into the fold. We might be running out of time. John, you said you were keen to.
Yes, let me bring this session to a wrap. As you can tell, HCA has been really fortunate, really since its inception, to have really a great deal of support from a diverse and wide group of funders. And that's, of course, amazingly valuable, not just in the financial support, but also just in the mechanisms that it provides for networking, for working with other consortia and so forth. So it's always very much appreciated. I would also note, in terms of learning about future opportunities and new opportunities, that we also work with the funders to publicize new opportunities and to set up registries to enable matchmaking around certain grant calls as well. You can watch for that information both on our social media accounts and also in the quarterly newsletter as well. And it's really a great way to expand on this partnership.